Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar, Analytics, Goals and Measurement. My name is Emma and I'll be facilitating today's webinar. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. The webinar will last for approximately 45 minutes. All attendees are on mute, so the only voices you should hear throughout the webinar will be mine and the presenters. You'll have the opportunity to submit text questions to today's presenter by typing your questions into the chat box of the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation, and we'll collect these and address as many as we can during the Q&A session at the end of the session. You'll receive a follow-up email within the next couple of days with a link to view the recordings of today's webinar. So we're just going to wait a few more minutes just to see if anyone else is going to join us. I'd now like to introduce Daniel Rolls, a Course Director for CIM and CEO of Target Internet, who will be presenting today's webinar. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Daniel.
Thanks very much, Emma. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this Analytics and Goals and Measurement webinar. I'm Daniel Rolls, as just been said, and I will just start by briefly introducing myself and explaining what we're going to go through. So, as Emma said, I am a Course Director for the Chartered Institute of Marketing, which means I teach on behalf of the Chartered Institute. But like all the course directors, as well as teaching for the CIM, we actually do this stuff in the real world as well. So I'm also Associate Professor at Imperial College, meaning I teach on the Masters and MBA programs there. I've written a few books on the topic, which I promise not to mention at all as we're going through things today. What I do on a day-by-day basis is run a company called Target Internet, and we help companies upskill their teams. And we have lots of brands, like you can see on the screen there. If you've got anything nice or nasty to say during the presentation, please just feel free to tweet things through to me. It's just Daniel Rolls on Twitter. And I'll give you all the rest of my contact details at the end of the session, so if you've got any follow-up questions, you're very welcome to send those through. Main content today, we're going to go through and try and put data, analytics and goals in perspective, look at where things are with digital and digital marketing and measurement at the moment. And then I'm going to try and give you a measurement framework that should solve pretty much all of your measurement problems. So it's a pretty bold thing to try and do in a 45-minute webinar, but we'll go through, I'll show you a measurement framework, how it works in practice. And this is a measurement framework we've used from huge companies through to one-man bands. So hopefully you can take away and apply something. As we're going through things, I'll also try and give you a number of free tools that will be really useful to take away and introduce you to some new things that Google are up to with analytics. So let's get going. Let's look at data in practice and just start by thinking about some of the challenges we're going to face. So we were working with a high street bank and they had redesigned their website and they said, it's brilliant, we've redesigned the website, we have embraced content marketing, added lots of content to our website, and now people are staying on the website 3 times as long, which sounds fantastic. People are staying longer, they must therefore be more engaged. But we thought, actually, let's go and look at the data and work out what it's really telling us. So before they redesigned their website looked roughly something like this. So they go into the website as a user, and the first thing people do is wait about 5 seconds for the page to load up, and then they click on the Login to Personal Banking button on the top right of the screen. That was it. That was the average user before they redesigned. When they redesigned the website, they rearranged things a little bit, but they moved the login button. Then what happens? Well, people come through, they wait 5 seconds for the page to load, they then spend 10 seconds saying to themselves, where's the button gone? And eventually they find it and click through. The visit duration has just gone from 5 seconds to 15 seconds. So your analytic tells you have a 300% visit duration compared to normal, and you say, brilliant, people are staying 3 times longer. Whereas actually, in reality, what's happened is you've just annoyed your customers for 10 seconds. So the key point here is that we have a lot of data now. Google Analytics itself has over 360 different reports available to us, plus each of those reports can be customized. So the problem isn't a lack of data. The problem is an overwhelming amount of data, and somebody's got to do something with it. So generally, we're going to be looking at data. We're going to be drawing some sort of inference from that. So we come up with an idea, and we think, I think this is the case. Then you go off and carry off an experiment. You change one of your channels, or you change your website. Then you come back and look at the data again and see if that worked or didn't work. But actually, normally what happens is once a month, somebody holds up a report saying, oh, look, web traffic's gone up. And that's about as far as we go. So we need to drill into the data, and somebody needs to paint a picture with the data. And that's what we're going to try and talk about a little bit today, and how we can do that. The other problem is we're measuring the wrong things a lot of the time. Now, hopefully we've gone past vanity-based metrics. So instead of worrying about us having 10,000 likes or 10,000 followers, hopefully we're looking at engagement. But even then, it's very easy to get things wrong. So here I am on one of our Facebook pages. This is for the Digital Marketing Podcast that we run. And we've got a little post here that says, how to kill your brand in 140 characters, 6.5 hilarious social media marketing failures. So there's a piece of content, it's on the topic, it's hopefully the right tone for Facebook as well. I know on this page I've got around 24,000 likes, it's a big number of likes, and actually on this particular post I can see I've had over 300 likes and I've got lots and lots of comments. So far this sounds great. Lots of reach, lots of engagement, and actually really more importantly, lots and lots of conversations. So if I was reporting on this, this would all sound great so far. But let's drill into it a little bit more. So here we've got some of the comments that have been left. And each of those comments has got between 19 and 10, 11, 12 responses. But if we read the comments, we might start to get a little bit concerned. So they say, anything about this is important. More posts on internet marketing, please. Always love everything like this. Love the page. My opinion, this really is some very important content. And you get the idea. And it all sounds a bit generic. So let's drill into it a little bit more and let's look at the replies to one of these comments. So we've got heart, question mark, smiley face, winky face. Yes, exclamation mark. Totally right, could not agree more. Lots more smiley faces, lots of agreement. No one actually saying anything specific. So what's going on here? Well, actually, this is bots speaking to bots. What do I mean by that? Well, people are creating little scripts, pieces of code, that essentially are mentioning, commenting, and engaging with other people's Facebook pages. Why would they do that? Well, basically, so it looks like their Facebook page is more active, and then they'll get rewarded by Facebook for having an active page, and their page should get more visibility. This is basically people trying to game the system. And actually, if I reported the wrong things, 24,000 likes, 22% engage with my audience, high levels of conversation, it all sounds great, but actually there's no commercial value in this whatsoever. Because if all of these comments and engagement are fake, these aren't real people, it's not driving anyone to my website, and it's not actually making me any money. So I need to look at volume, I need to look at engagement, but I also need to look at what's actually going on, what's the end outcome. Do people end up on my website doing the things I want them to do? And we're going to put a measurement framework together a little bit later in this presentation that shows us how to do exactly that. There's some other myths as well within analytics and data that are very common. So for example, bounce rates. We assume that bounce rates on our websites are a bad thing. But actually, it's not necessarily the case. A bounce, for example, somebody clicks on a link in an email, they go through to your landing page, they might read that page for 25 minutes if it's a blog post, have a great experience, and leave without visiting another page, and that was a bounce. But actually, the user might have had a great experience. Now, if I want you to go through an e-commerce transaction and carry out a number of different steps, then clearly a bounce is a bad thing. But actually, if you just want to come to my website and look up my postcode, so you can put it into your sat-nav to come and find my shop, or I want you to read a blog post to become more aware of something, actually a bounce isn't necessarily a bad thing. So we can't look at one piece of data in isolation. So quite often when people look at bounce rates, they go, well, that's okay, because I'm going to look at time on site as well, work out how long they've been on my web page. Let's get a little bit more technical now, and dig into detail a bit more, but let's actually try and work out how time on site is calculated. So, say I get to your website, and I get to page A, which is the home page of your website, and I stay there for 5 seconds. Then I go through to page B, which maybe is the blog post, and I read that, for around 5 minutes, about 300 seconds. So what's the average page visit duration? Well, very often you would assume that we add the two together, so 300 seconds plus 5 seconds, and then just divide it by 2. So I'd end up with 152.5 seconds, which, although it's not correct, I guess, it's not a bad way of calculating it. That's not actually how your analytics is going to calculate things. What your analytics is going to say is that actually the average page visit duration is 5 seconds. So why is that? Well, the way that analytics works is through something called page tagging. And page tagging is essentially putting a little bit of code onto every single page of your website, and then that code loads when your page loads. So you get to page A and the code loads up, so it knows when you arrived on that page. Then when you go to page B, because there's some cookies in your machine to remember who you are, it knows when you arrived on that page. So it deducts the time from when you arrived on that one, from the time when you arrived on the other one, and it can calculate you were on page A for a total of 5 seconds. If there is no page C, it has no idea how long you're on page B, and therefore just discounts that 300 seconds. So actually, in reality, the last page we're on isn't generally calculated into our time on website, and therefore, time on site isn't incredibly accurate. Now, bear in mind, if there is only a page A, and maybe this time I was on page A for 300 seconds, and then I left, I bounced, it will know when I arrived, but it'll have no idea when I left, and because I didn't go to another page, it won't know how long I've been on that page, and it will just discount it completely. So all of your bounced visits, those people that enter and exit your website on the same page, the time on site isn't actually calculated at all. So in reality, time on site isn't particularly accurate. Now, there is something we can do to improve this. Analytics generally works by looking at when people arrived on particular pages, and that's the only message that's sent through to analytics. But we can add something called events, and events that things that happen within our pages. So, for example, I might get to a page with a video on. Did I actually hit the play button? Did I listen halfway through that particular video? Did I watch it to the very end? We could add events to our pages for when someone hits the play button, when someone gets halfway through a video, when they listen to a podcast. But in fact, when they start scrolling on a page, when they scroll halfway down, when they scroll to the end. And essentially, by adding these events, we're going to increase the accuracy of the timings on our website. But also we're going to give ourselves a bit more data, because just because you got to my blog post page doesn't mean that you actually read it. So events can be massively impactful in the ability to actually understand your analytics data, but they're not there as standard, and you have to add additional code to your web pages. So this is something you get your developer to do. Now, you don't need to do this at an individual page basis, add it to every single page one by one. You could build it into a template. There are other tools like Tag Manager that help you insert code, but it is something a developer needs to do for you. And if you do that, not only will you know people have got to your pages, but you'll know how they're actually interacting with them, and you'll get much improved accuracy of time on site. Now, what we really want to do with analytics is go beyond the idea of LastClick Attribution. So let me just put this in perspective. So I get an email, and that makes me think about a brand, and then a week later I do a search for that brand, and then I go through to the website and I buy something, or I fill in a form, whatever the end goal is, I convert. Someone else, they just did a search in Google and ended up converting. If you look at analytics incorrectly, both of those journeys through to conversion will look exactly the same. Why is that? Because in both cases, the last thing that happened before the conversion was the search. And therefore, we say, well, search provided all the value. Why are we bothering doing email marketing? Switch it off. So we switch off the email marketing, but then we don't get the search in the top path, and we don't get a conversion. So I need to understand each step of the journey that leads to conversion, so I can say, yes, email is actually providing value. So that's what we're going to do in a moment, and we're going to go through and build a measurement framework that allows you to do just that. We also need long-term thinking. So if I produce a piece of content and I post that content, I'm probably going to get a little spike in traffic to my website. But what I really want to do is get a longer build-up of traffic to the website from that content by making sure it's optimized for the search engines, and therefore building traffic up every month. So ideally, I create a piece of content, I socialize it by tweeting and Facebook and LinkedIn, whichever platforms I'm using, and I get that spike in traffic. But then, because I've written my content thinking about the search engines, building in words that people are searching for, I start to get picked up in Google, and therefore I start to drive traffic over the long term. And what that means is that for every blog post I write, I'll be adding traffic every month, month in, month out. Now, for example, to drill into this, you would go through to your analytics. I'm looking at Google Analytics here. There are obviously other analytics packages available as well. I go to my behavior reports, and I can look at all of my pages, which ones are the most popular. And if I scroll down a little bit in here, and I get to position 6, for example, in this screenshot you can see here, it says setting up YouTube channels, tips, templates, and infographics. And that's driven through 1,621 visits. That piece of content was written 3 years ago. Been updated, but actually it was written 3 years ago. But because it's been picked up by the search engines, it's then driving visits every month to my website, and there is an intrinsic value to that, because some of those people will then convert into doing the things that I want them to do. So we need to look at the analytics to work out what worked, what didn't work, and then iterate through that process to try and improve things, to do more content like this that actually is providing value to me in the long term. Now, in an ideal world, we've got our web analytics information and data, but also we might have data from our email marketing, such as our open rates and click-through rates. We might have display campaign data, data from our CRM systems, our customer relationship management systems, social media data, and so on. And I need to bring that data into one place. I'm going to show you a technique for doing this using an Excel spreadsheet in just a moment. But I'm also going to show you another tool from Google that will allow you to do this in a really nice visual way. And you can bring data in from any number of different sources, and it will actually automate you bringing data in from Google Analytics and Google Paid Search and other places like that. So we want to achieve a single customer view, referred to as SCV, so that actually I can measure, understand a bit more deeply, and then use that data to do right things going forwards. So if you're using Google Analytics, if you haven't logged in the last couple of weeks, you'll be quite surprised when you do log in, as they've added some brand new features. So when you go in now, there is a new homepage. So previously, you just got taken through to your audience reports. But actually now, you go through to this new homepage, and it's got all sorts of new visualizations. So just about, you can probably see on the left-hand side of the screen, I've got these kind of blue little bars on a chart. That's telling me the optimum times of day where people are visiting my website, which that data was available, but it wasn't available in a visualization like this before. So nice little homepage with some new reports on it. Over on the left-hand side, down towards the bottom, it says Discover, which is just above the admin. So if you haven't been in for a while, the admin has moved from the top menu to the left-hand menu. But Discover, when you click on that, will show you other new analytics products and features, and also lots of new tutorials for using Google Analytics more effectively as well. And the other features they built in are intelligence events. So top of the page on the right-hand side, it says Intelligence, and it's got a little logo. And you can go in there and you can just type a question in. So, for example, compare the bounce rate for device, mobile and device desktop over the last month or week or whatever it may be. And it will come back and say, right, compare those two different devices, the bounce rate on mobile and desktop, and it gives me the answer. So you can go in, put any question, just type it in natural language, and hopefully Google will try and come up with the correct answer for you. Now, this has got machine learning built into it. So what that basically means is if you go in here and you say, was this answer helpful? And you say, yes, it was very good. They will learn that their response was a good response. Whereas if the data it gives you is nonsense and it was entirely incorrect for what you're asking for, you hit no, and it should learn that way as well. Google did a big launch event about 6 weeks ago, and throughout that event, they spoke more than anything else about machine learning. Machine learning is basically using these kind of techniques all the way through to really full-on artificial intelligence for starting to understand things and build knowledge more and more. And they said that's going to not only be built into their analytics products, but also things like paid search. So paid search, rather than saying, I'm just targeting these couple of keywords, we can start to target on people's behaviors. We can target on people's previous behaviors and so on as well, and the system and the platform should be learning. So you've got these intelligence reports. It's worth trying out, see how they work for you, and that's based on machine learning. Now, you might have also heard about messenger bots. This is Facebook Messenger, and this is the Health Tap bot. I've put a link on the screen. You'll get the slides afterwards, but basically you can click on this link, go through to Target Internet, which is my website, and there's 5 examples of bots that you can chat to right now. So basically a bot is a little bit of software that's been written, and you can go and you can ask it questions and you can talk to it. And in this case, I can ask medical questions about particular topics. Now, I'd always be careful about searching for medical topics on the internet because you'll end up thinking there's something wrong that isn't wrong. But anyway, you can go through and chat. This is not really machine learning or artificial intelligence. This is the scripting. If someone says this, then say this. If they do this, then do that, and so on. And these scripts can be very clever, but at the moment, you probably know that if you've used Siri on your phone, it's great, and it's getting cleverer and cleverer, but it's not necessarily genuinely useful. And actually, you're going to probably find the same thing with these bots. So the day that we all have bots on our website, and that's doing customer service for us, is a little way off yet. But for things like frequently asked questions, it can work quite well as well. Let's carry on looking through some analytics features, some new things. If you go to Google Analytics at the moment and you click on the top right-hand side, you'll see a little thing that shows you all the different tools. So Analytics we're aware of, Google Analytics. But there's 4 others in here you might not be aware of. Tag Manager gives you a way of inserting code into your web pages easily. It's a tool that's really designed for developers, but it's well worth getting in place because if I'm going to add the Google Analytics code to my web page, and then I'm going to do some Facebook advertising, so I need some Facebook code on my web pages, and then I'm doing some email marketing with MailChimp, and I want to do some automatic triggering of emails, I need to add some code to my web page as well. Rather than managing it manually, you can do it through Tag Manager. Again, it's quite a technical tool, but just be aware it's there. The next 3, however, are great. So we've got Optimize. Optimize I'll talk about in a second, but that allows you to do A/B testing very easily within your web pages. Data Studio, I'll talk about again in a moment, allows you to bring data in from any number of different sources and create great visual reports. And then Surveys is a very interesting one. Surveys allows you to do surveys, unsurprisingly, but it will distribute it to people to get answers for you as well. So you can say, I want people in the UK between the age of 25 to 35 who work in marketing roles. And it will put your survey in front of those people, and then you pay per response. So some great tools appearing within Google Analytics. Let's just take a look at a couple of those before we go off and build our measurement framework. So first of all, Google Optimize. I can essentially do 2 real types of tests. A/B tests, where I create 2 different versions of my web page, or actually 5 versions. It could be A, B, C, D, E testing. And they are compared against each other to see the end results of which one actually drives the most conversions, the most people to do the thing I want them to do. The platform will manage which people see which version of the page. It will do the statistical analysis to work out actually what is statistically significant. And then finally, it will tell you a result. Multivariate testing allows you to mix up different titles or different headings with different layouts, with different images, and mix all those different components together and spit out different versions of a web page, and then eventually work out which one works best. Multivariate testing is generally for websites that have lots of traffic and lots of conversions, whereas A/B testing is suitable for pretty much most other types of websites. Now, why would you do A/B testing? Well, basically because A/B testing is really good to get rid of subjectivity. So essentially you'll find that everyone, and I mean pretty much everyone, is an expert in 2 things. Everyone's an expert in copywriting, because if you give them some copy, they'll rewrite it. And everyone is an expert in web design, because if you show them a website, they'll tell you how you can improve it. And we need to take a bit of that subjectivity out of things. So, to give you an example here. We have 2 versions of a form. One on the left, one on the right. One on the left has a little trust certificate added to it. So your gut feeling would probably be, well, if it's got a trust certificate, people look at that and go, great, this is a trustworthy website. I'm a little bit more likely to fill this form in. And it might only be a tiny percentage. But what you actually find in reality is that more people fill in version B. Why is that? Well, essentially, because people see version A, the certificate reminds them about trust and data and privacy, and they think, oh, I don't really want to put my details in. So it puts you off filling it in. So actually, the results of A/B tests can be counterintuitive. So therefore, we actually need to test these things out. And then finally, just to show you, this is Data Studio. Data Studio is a lovely tool from Google. It allows you to bring in data from lots of different places. You can do that obviously in real time if you connect it up using some of their tools. So for example here, I've got a very standard Google AdWords report, connects to my Google AdWords account, pulls all the data in, visualizes it, but I can still interact with this report. I can change date ranges and so on as well. So Data Studio is very nice when you've got analytics data, email marketing data, display advertising data, maybe offline marketing data, and you want to bring that to one place and then update it easily and regularly as well. So that's kind of the state of the market, where things are changing and so on. But we want to try and build out a measurement framework, something that will allow us to measure all of our digital activity, but then really work out what's contributing and what's not. Now I'm going to show you the framework. It looks a bit complicated on first inspection, but please don't panic. So what we've got here. This is a measurement framework, that essentially allows us to work out how our different channels are contributing, but keeps an eye on our core business objectives. So what we need to start by doing is defining what our primary objectives are. And a primary objective is essentially the key thing that I want you to do online is as near as possible to my business objective. Now, if you're an e-commerce website, your primary objective and your business objective is exactly the same thing. There is no gap. So we don't need any gap correlation, as you can see at the top of the chart here. Whereas if I'm a B2B, a business-to-business organization, what I probably want is lead generation. That's someone filling in a form or picking up the phone. So my primary objective is a lead, whereas my business objective is actually a sale. They're not exactly the same thing because you obviously have to take that lead and then convert it into a sale. So I'm then going to need some gap correlation to connect the two things. How would you do that? Well, very simply, use a CRM, a customer relationship management system. The other type of organization, which is a bit more complicated, is a brand or someone that's only interested in creating awareness or changing someone's mind about something. My primary objective is some sort of activity online, like reading something, watching a video, whereas my business objective might be you walking into my shop 2 weeks later and buying a product. So there's a much bigger gap between those two things. How do you bridge that gap? We have to do sample survey. And we'll talk about that a bit more in a moment. But the first thing we need to do is define our primary objective. What is it that I want people to do? And then below that on the chart in the grey areas, we've got all our different sources of traffic. So maybe search optimization, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, email marketing, and so on. And there's different things that I'm going to measure for each of those channels. So indicators, we're going to call those the different things we're measuring for our channels, the key performance indicators for each channel. But I need to know what contribution those channels are making. Because I can get all the traffic in the world through from my email marketing, but actually if it's the wrong traffic, they're never going to go through and contribute to people actually doing the thing I want them to do. Let's build this model out a little bit. So, we start with our primary objective. That doesn't need to be my end business objective, but it's the nearest thing I can get you to do online. We can go through and draw the gap together between those, but what we're looking for in our primary objective is a proxy for success. So that could be, I know if you fill the form in on my website, that's generated a lead, so that's great. If you buy something on my website, great, that's my end conversion. But it might be, I think you engaging with my content for a certain period of time, or watching a video to the end. That's my primary objective, listening to a podcast. Now, we'll come back in a moment and look how we connect those two things up. But what you need to start by doing is setting your primary objectives as goals within analytics. And essentially what we do is we go through into our admin of analytics and we go, right, I want to set some goals up. And it's essentially going to give you 4 different options. The first is a destination goal. Destination goal is nice and straightforward. Destination goal is someone getting to a particular page. And that's normally a thank you page. Thank you for buying. Thank you for downloading. Thank you for filling in the form. Thank you for watching the video. You've done something and it takes you somewhere afterwards. You can mark that as your end objective and you know that somebody's done something. The next you need to be a little bit more careful with, a duration or a pages per visit. So for example, someone stays more than 5 minutes on the website. Or maybe someone looks at more than 5 pages on the website. Well, in both cases that could be a good thing showing engagement, but actually it could also be something that means they can't find what they're looking for. They're having a difficulty actually getting through to conversion. So you might be careful with those ones. An event is something that happens within a page, and I spoke about these earlier on. This could be somebody playing a video, this could be someone listening to a podcast, watching the video to the end, but it could also equally be someone just scrolling in your web pages. Events can be very powerful, but also just remember you need a developer to help you set them up. So I go in and I set my goals. So for example, on my website, I really have a couple of key goals. One is lead generation, someone filling in a form, a contact form. So I'll either set that as a destination goal, someone getting through to the thank you for filling in the form, will be in contact shortly page, or what I might have to do is use an event. Because if it doesn't have a thank you page, i.e. you fill the form in, you stay on the same page, but then it says thank you for filling in the form, someone will be in contact shortly, I'll add an event to that form. So when someone submits the form, it will then trigger that event into analytics, and that analytics sets that as a goal you've completed doing something. Again, with events, you need to get your developer to help you set those up. So I've set my primary objective as a goal in Google Analytics or any other analytics. So I've got this end goal set up, so now I need to think about my different traffic sources. What am I measuring for them? Well, indicator 1 in every case in this model is how much traffic from that particular source. So, say our digital traffic source 1 was email marketing. indicator 1 would be traffic to the website via email in the last month. What would my other indicators be? Well, they're the key things that are important for that channel. So, for example, it might be my average open rate, my average click-through rate. I might actually have more than 3 measures. I might have how many emails are on my list and how many emails I sent out in the last month. Because those measures are the things that I can change. I can probably get more traffic to my website if I improve my open rate, I improve the click-through rate, I get more people on my list in the first place, or I send out more emails. And what I'm looking for is the opportunity to change each of those. Maybe our next source of traffic was something like Twitter. So indicator 1 again is going to be how much traffic from that particular source. So how much traffic from Twitter in the last month? What are my other indicators? Well, I could say how many tweets per day that I send out. I could say how many people are following me on Twitter. And then I could say what's my average engagement percentage for my tweets. They're all things I could change because I can tweet more, I can get more Twitter followers, or I can tweet more interesting content. Incidentally, if you are looking for how to find out your average Twitter engagement rate, just log into Twitter as normal and then just go to analytics.twitter.com and you get loads of data about the engagement with your content. So basically, I've worked out what my key primary objective is, and then I've gone through and I decided what I'm measuring for each channel. But in every case, indicator 1 is the amount of traffic from that particular channel. And then everything else, the other measures are the key things. The one that can be trickier here is search optimization. So search optimization indicator 1 will be how much traffic from Google in the last month. Then what else am I going to measure from SEO? Well, you can measure the number of links to your website. So you could use an SEO tool to do that. You could use something like seranking.com to say, of the 100 words and phrases that I'm interested in ranking for, how many are in top 10 positions? Or you could even use a tool like Site Explorer. So if you just search Open Site Explorer, you put your website into that, and it will give you a domain authority score, because that's a number that says how trusted is your website. So these are all things that I could measure for that particular channel. And I could say, how am I going to improve those numbers? Well, I'm going to get more links to my website. I'm going to create more well-optimized content. So in every case, we're working out what we're measuring for each channel, but key indicator 1 is how much traffic from that channel. Now, the next stage in building this model is to say, right, I've probably opened up an Excel spreadsheet, and I've got one cell that says how many primary objectives in the last month, how many people filled in that form for me. Then I've got cells for each of my channels with the numbers for my key indicators. But then it's all very well having millions of visits from search optimization, but do they actually contribute to people carrying out my primary objective? Are those people ending up doing the things I want them to do? How can we find that out? Well, there's a great report in Google Analytics called Multichannel Conversion Visualizer. So it's your multi-channel funnels report. And this will tell you, of all the people that ended up doing the thing that you wanted them to do, that is those people in my case that are filling in my form, essentially, what channels did they use on the way there? So I can go in here and I can see that people are using organic search in green, direct traffic, that is people typing my website address directly, is the yellow. I can see referrals, other websites driving people through, and I can see lots of these circles are overlapping. So essentially, a lot of people that come to a website via search, the next time they might come in just by tapping in my website address. Lots of people that visit my website by clicking on a link, then search that website again in the future. So there might be lots of different touch points involved in someone actually ending up doing the thing that I want them to do. But this is actually telling me each channel, what percentage of people that end up doing the thing I want them to do, of their journeys actually involve this particular channel, what percentage. So these percentages will add up to more than 100%, that's fine. Because you might come in from search, come in from social media in every case, and therefore my numbers will add up to more than 100. But essentially what you do is you take this percentage and you drop it into our chart as the contribution percentage. So if we go all the way back and we look at our framework, I've essentially gone through, defined my primary objective, and in my spreadsheet, and actually you could do this in Google Data Studio as well, I measure how many primary objectives I had in the last month. Then I measure all the different things in my channel, focusing on how much traffic I get from each of those channels. But then, really importantly, I can put my contributions percentage in. Then I can look at this as a dashboard and say, well, I see that Twitter drove lots of traffic, but actually it's not contributing very much. Could we improve something? Could we change that kind of type of traffic? Or actually, we've got emails not driving much traffic and it's not contributing. So what this dashboard is allowing me to do is at a high level look at what's happening and then give me some ideas for my next steps. And then what I do is try and get more Twitter traffic but higher quality. Maybe drive more email traffic. And then I go back a month later, I look at the chart and said, did that channel contribute more? Because essentially what I want to do is spend more time on the things that are working and try and improve the things that aren't working and potentially figure out what isn't working at all. Now, once we've got this built up, we've still got one last piece depending on the type of brand we are. E-commerce, there is no gap. B2B, probably lead generation, I need a CRM system, a customer relationship management system that I put my leads into, and then my sales team will mark that as complete or not complete. That could equally be a spreadsheet for doing that. But the other type of brand are those brands where your primary objective is someone going through and doing something, and then your end objective is somebody actually doing something in a store or a distance away from that actual online objective. And there's really two ways of looking at that. We're going to do questionnaire sample surveys. And what we'll do is once people have bought our product or service, we're going to ask them a series of questions. We're going to ask them what they bought and how much they spent. And then we're going to ask them about their media consumption. So did you follow us on Facebook? Did you follow us on Twitter? Did you visit the website? Did you search for us? And what we can start to do is make the connection between the people that end up doing what we want them to do, how did they get there? Now, if you're a brand, so if I give you an example, if you are a brand of frozen peas, for example, and I do lots of TV advertising, I do some advertising in social media, I've got great engaging content, and then 2 weeks later somebody walks into Tesco or another supermarket and buys those peas, how am I going to work out why you did that? Well, I'm probably going to have some sort of thing on the pack that says go online, fill in our survey, and we'll put you into a prize draw to win a great prize. Because then I can go back and measure all those people that did what I wanted them to do, what media did they consume, so I can start to understand how it's impacting their behaviour. Now, if you are a big brand and you're going to do this, you generally were going to get a specialist company involved because there's lots of ways of skewing your own results. But really, there are only 3 types of companies. You've got the type of company that's got an e-commerce transaction, where the primary objective and the end objective are the same thing. You've got lead generation businesses, where my primary objective is a form being filled in or a phone call being made, and my end objective is actual sale. I bridge that gap with a CRM system. And then you have the kind of brands where I want to change your behaviour in the future by making you aware of something, or perhaps actually just building some engagement. And then I need to do some sample survey. Now, we've looked at the state of the market, and we've also gone through and we've looked at a measurement framework. And the measurement framework on first inspection might seem quite straightforward and easy to follow, but when you come to do it, you might miss some of the steps. So I've put a link on the screen here. What we've got here is a step-by-step guide to that model. And it goes into a lot more detail about the sample surveying bit at the end, because that's the bit that's relatively complicated and needs a little bit more thought as well. But this guide will take you through and show you how to set analytics goals, how to select the right goals, the kinds of things you should be measuring each of your channels, and then how you can build out this kind of Excel spreadsheet to include that contribution percentage as well. So that's all the content that I want to go through for today. But I just want to give you some contact details before we find out if there's any questions. So on Twitter, it's just Daniel Rolls. If you're on Instagram, which I know more and more of you are, it's just Target Internet. And that's my business Instagram on there as well. If you want more information on this on the website as well, it's targetinternet.com/blog, and you'll find thousands of reports and blogs and podcasts and videos, and you'll actually find the digital marketing podcast there as well, which is now weekly. So if you want to get hold of the digital marketing podcast, that's a good place to do it as well. So thank you very much for listening for the last 45 minutes. I'm just going to go back to Emma now and see if there are any questions. But if there aren't, even if there's only 1 or 2, you can always follow up with questions afterwards on any of those social channels as well, and feel free to connect up on LinkedIn. So Emma, have we got any questions?
Thank you, Daniel. No, we don't have any questions at the moment, so are you happy just to give them a few minutes? Just in case
yes, if anyone wants to type any questions in, please go ahead and type those in, and we'll hang around to answer those. And as I say, while you're doing that, if you want to follow up in any way online, just via social, I'm happy to answer questions that way as well.
So just to those who are listening, you can submit your questions via the chat box in the control panel.
And also, if you're listening or watching this video from the recording afterwards, so you didn't make it to the live session, please feel free to ask your questions as well. So again, the best way of probably doing that is on Twitter. So it's just Daniel Rolls on Twitter, and I'll be happy to answer your questions there as well. Okay. Well, it seems like there's nothing coming through at the moment. So if you have got any, go ahead and ask those. But if not, thank you very much for listening today. Hope you found it useful. And please just let us know any of those questions in the future.
Thank you, Daniel, for presenting today's webinar, and thank you to everyone for attending. The topics covered today are included in the new Digital Diploma in Professional Marketing, Level 6. So if you're interested, please contact us for more information. Once you leave the webinar, you'll receive a survey on the presentation, and we'd appreciate it if you could complete that and provide your feedback. On behalf of CIM and today's presenter, thank you for joining us today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thanks very much, everyone. Goodbye.